A man remains in custody after 3 people were hospitalised following a stabbing incident in Stoneybatter, which injured those 3. Garda is still searching for a motive, although someone is under arrest. I'm joined in studio by Andrew Louth, Newstalk reporter. On the line, we're joined by Marie Sherlock, Labour TD for Dublin Central. Good morning and welcome to you both. We'll go to you, Andrew, first of all. What do we know so far?
Well, Pat, between around 2:30 and 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, Gardaí started receiving phone calls from the public about a man attacking others in what was described to me as chaotic scenes around the Stoneybatter area. So when I got there at around 3:45 yesterday afternoon, there were scenes sealed off in close proximity to the Oxmanstown Road, very close to the North Circular Road, and as well as Carney Street and Niles Street as well. And 3 men aged between their 20s and their 40s were injured. They were all stabbed with what I'm told was a box cutter knife. And 2 of the men were seriously injured, but with non-life threatening injuries, and another man was described as having less serious injuries.
Is it understood that it was totally random?
Yes, that's it, Pat. And one of the first things that Gardaí were looking at is this terror relation. They very quickly ruled that one out, and there were reports that there could have been a link to a row earlier yesterday afternoon, but that was also very quickly ruled out. But this, I think this is what is one of the scarier things about this, Pat. It seems to be a very random attack on 3 people, unrelated to anything else that had happened.
What do we know about the suspect who's in custody?
Well, the suspect, I'm told, is a man in his 20s, and he's, from what I believe, is originally from Latin America. He is not an international protection applicant, and from what I've been told, he became homeless in recent months, and that he had lived in the Dublin 7 area in the past as well. And he has come to the attention of Gardaí before, I believe, in relation to very minor drugs offences, but certainly nothing in that could have suggested that something like this could have happened.
I don't know what questions this raises about knife crime. I mean, what can you do? A box cutter is a tool that would be in many a toolbox of an ordinary worker going about his daily tasks.
It goes back to what you asked earlier. Was this completely random? And is there a solution to prevent something like this? And it was interesting to hear Jim O'Callaghan on Newstalk Breakfast earlier saying, you and I here, Pat, we're very lucky that we're not talking about fatalities here, such as the quick actions of the Gardaí, but does this raise the questions again about community policing? Having a friendly face there that people can call upon. Like when I was growing up, Pat, everyone knew who the local community guard was.
If the local community guard comes across an incident like this, and the local community guard, like all the Gardaí, has very limited weaponry at his or her disposal. They might have pepper spray.
Yeah.
They have a stab vest themselves, but I mean, you'd be brave enough to approach someone with a box cutter, and you're depending on your stab vest to save. It won't save your face.
Well, it
won't save your wrist. It won't save an artery that might be slit.
Of course, Pat, and obviously, we know the dangers that Gardaí face every single day. But it was an unarmed guard who did end up apprehending this suspect in the end, and I think there's a lot of people in Stoneybatter today who are very grateful for that guard, especially putting himself in such harm's way, unarmed, as was pointed out before.
All right, Andrew, stay with us. Marie Sherlock, listening to that conversation. Marie, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
This is so untypical of what you might expect in the Stoneybatter area, which has become significantly gentrified in the last while.
Yes, well, look, I think what happened yesterday is obviously hugely distressing and shocking set of events in, a series of very quiet streets. And I think, look, obviously our thoughts go out to the 3 men who are going to suffer a huge trauma from this, and obviously have to sort of recover from the shocking stab wounds that they got. Look, certainly when I was down in Stoneybatter last night, and from talking to the first responder on the scene, from talking to people in the community, talking to the Gardaí, there seems to be an awful case here of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that this was a random attack. Around a series of random frenzied attacks, and I suppose huge credit to, in particular, Dublin Fire Brigade for coming on the scene so quickly, and then to the Gardaí and indeed to the Gardaí for effectively bringing calm and lifting the cordon off the streets very quickly, in the hours after the event. But look, I think people are reeling from what happened yesterday. And obviously things could have been, we could have been talking about deaths here this morning, but thankfully we're not.
Now, what's your reaction to the fact, it seems, that certain right-wing elements are using social media to take a particular stance on this?
Well, look, I think certainly, once, in the minutes after the stabbings took place yesterday, certainly I was getting messages, and I know others were as well, in terms of, querying what the motivation was, and obviously there's huge concerns about what exactly happened. But look, the reality is, as we understand it from Garda Síochána, is that this was uh, a random attack. Indeed, I think the Gardaí suspect that it may be mental health difficulties, and of course, anybody who goes and stabs anybody in that sort of manner would have such challenges. But I think ultimately, what was really crucial last night was that the guards, acted very swiftly in the Stoneybatter area to comprehend, to obviously take the attacker, and then, lift the cordon relatively quickly, so that there wasn't a focal point for any protests or anything like that. But look, the vast majority of people in Stoneybatter, and this is the critical thing, Pat, the vast majority of people in Stoneybatter were saying, were sending me messages yesterday, in shock and sympathy to the three men who've been attacked here. And I think there's ultimately a very tiny number that are looking to try and exploit what happened yesterday.
All right, but there's nothing really one can do about random attacks like this. If they come out of the blue, someone who has, okay, this guy had some sort of history of contact with the Gardaí, but nothing of an aggravated nature such as the suspect is accused of now. So how can you protect a community from something like this? I don't think you can.
Well, I think there's three things here, right? Firstly, there's a horrible reality that, if a random knife attack is to happen, it will happen, and there's very little, unfortunately, that the Gardaí can do to prevent that. I think there is a second point, though, that obviously there's a wider frustration, and I held 2 meetings in Stoneybatter area last year, because there is a frustration about the level of community Gardaí in the community, and obviously huge desire to have much more, because there are, like so many communities across the country, there are challenges. But Stoneybatter is there's a great community spirit there, but we do need to have more Gardaí on the ground. Would that have prevented what happened yesterday? Probably not. And I suppose the third key point really is that we have seen a spate of knife crimes, and indeed deaths take place here in the inner city in Dublin, but in other parts of the country over the last number of years. And certainly we would have spoken previously about the need to look at a knife amnesty, that culture of knife crime, of people carrying knives with them, and in terms of, by way of protection, when of course the irony is that leads to a greater risk of a life being lost. But I'm not in any way sure that, when we talk about knife crime in general, that's in any way related to what happened yesterday. And as your reporter said there, and yourself, anybody could be carrying, a Stanley knife. Most households have them, and it doesn't take very much to stab somebody. That's the horrible reality that we have here.